Have you ever wondered why modern spirituality feels so deeply personal, like a sacred journey inward, more about self-realization than religious dogma? Or why so many people today speak of shadow work, synchronicity, the inner child, or even integrating the divine masculine and feminine? These aren't just trendy buzzwords or random self-help jargon. Much of this spiritual vocabulary, this entire inward-focused path of transformation, owes a profound debt to a man who began as a psychiatrist, but ended up as a mythic thinker. Carl Gustav Jung, a pioneer of depth psychology, may not have intended to spark a spiritual revolution, but his ideas have become some of the most enduring foundations of what we now call modern spirituality and the New Age movement. Jung didn't just study the mind, he explored the soul. Welcome to the Unfolding Journey, where we explore the mysteries of the human psyche, the wisdom in ancient symbols, and the spiritual evolution of modern life. This channel is all about meaningful transformation, where psychology meets myth and personal growth meets soul-level insight. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and dive into the deeper waters of consciousness, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Carl Jung was not your typical scientist. Born in 1875 in Switzerland, he was trained in medicine and worked alongside Sigmund Freud, but quickly branched off when he realized that the human mind was more than a container of repressed desires. Jung saw the psyche as a spiritual entity in its own right, a sacred landscape filled with symbols, archetypes, and a deep drive toward wholeness. Unlike Freud, who reduced religion and spirituality to neuroses, Jung took spiritual experience seriously. In fact, he believed that true healing wasn't just about understanding your past. It was about reconnecting with your soul. And this one shift, viewing the psyche as a bridge between the personal and the eternal, would become one of Jung's most enduring contributions to modern spirituality. From psychology to spiritual path. So how exactly did Jung influence New Age and spiritual thought? It wasn't through preaching or creating a doctrine. It was through the language he used and the concepts he brought into the mainstream. Let's explore some of the most impactful ideas that have shaped the spiritual landscape we see today. 1. The collective unconscious, a shared spiritual blueprint. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious was revolutionary. He proposed that beyond our personal unconscious lies a deeper layer, a shared reservoir of symbolic knowledge, instincts, and archetypes inherited from the entire human species. This wasn't just psychological, it was deeply mythic. To Jung, this collective unconscious was populated by archetypes, universal patterns such as the hero, the shadow, the mother, the trickster. These weren't just characters in myths, they were living forces within our psyche. And understanding them wasn't academic, it was a spiritual quest to become whole. Modern spirituality borrowed this idea and ran with it. When you hear people talk about divine archetypes, the masculine and feminine principles, or exploring past lives to uncover inherited wounds, they're often engaging with Jungian ideas, whether they realize it or not. 3. Synchronicity, the spiritual language of the universe. One of the most mystical concepts Jung introduced was synchronicity, the experience of meaningful coincidences that seem to defy logic. These are the moments when the outer world mysteriously mirrors your inner state. You think of a friend and they call, or you dream of a symbol and see it in real life the next day. To Jung, synchronicities were not accidents. They were expressions of an acausal order, moments when the psyche and the world momentarily align, revealing an underlying unity. In today's spiritual communities, synchronicity is often viewed as a sign from the universe, a breadcrumb on the path, or a nudge from the divine. This idea is foundational to New Age thought, and it was Jung who gave it both a name and a philosophical foundation. 4. Shadow work, the spiritual path through darkness. Modern spirituality often emphasizes light, love, and positive energy, but many forget that authentic transformation requires confronting what we've repressed. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow comes in. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we deny or fear: anger, jealousy, pain, insecurity. Jung believed that real growth comes not from avoiding these aspects, but from facing and integrating them. The process of shadow work, now widely discussed in spiritual and healing communities, comes straight from Jung. It's about making the unconscious conscious, bringing light into our inner darkness. It's no coincidence that plant medicine, trauma healing, and inner child work, all popular in New Age circles, are deeply rooted in this Jungian idea of transformation through integration. 5. Dreams, symbols, and the language of the soul. Jung's work on dreams and symbolism was perhaps the most mystical aspect of his psychology. He believed that dreams are not meaningless. They are direct communications from the unconscious, often rich in symbolic meaning and mythic resonance. Jung didn't see dreams as puzzles to decode with logic, but as living messages that speak in the language of archetypes. A snake isn't just a snake. It could be a symbol of transformation, danger, or primal energy. Today's spiritual communities embrace this symbolic worldview. Whether through tarot cards, dream journals, crystal work, or energy readings, many New Age practices are built on the assumption that the universe communicates through symbols, a fundamentally Jungian idea. 6. The inner marriage, anima and animus. Another concept that influenced modern spirituality is Jung's idea of the anima and animus, the inner feminine in men and the inner masculine in women. For Jung, true psychological balance required integrating these inner opposites, a sacred inner marriage. This idea has become central in spiritual teachings about balancing masculine and feminine energies. You've likely heard phrases like divine masculine and divine feminine. This polarity, now explored in Tantra, yoga, and holistic healing, is rooted in Jungian psychology. When spiritual guides talk about embodying both strength and softness, structure and flow, they're essentially describing the process Jung called integrating the anima and animus. 2. Individuation, the sacred journey of the self. Perhaps Jung's most important contribution to spiritual thought is his concept of individuation. This is the lifelong process of becoming your most authentic self, integrating your conscious identity with the deeper, unconscious parts of your psyche. It's not about perfection, it's about wholeness. This mirrors the classic spiritual journey: the pilgrim, the seeker, the hero. In fact, Jung believed that every soul is on a path toward realizing the self, a higher organizing principle that transcends the ego. Today, when people speak of spiritual awakening or soul alignment, they're echoing Jung's idea that we're all called to transcend the superficial layers of identity and discover our true nature within. 7. The influence on the New Age movement. The New Age movement that began in the 1960s and flourished in the 1980s drew heavily on Jungian thought, often unconsciously. Writers like Joseph Campbell, who popularized the hero's journey, were deeply influenced by Jung's archetypes. Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, James Hillman, and Clarissa Pinkola Estes. All of them echoed Jung's ideas about myth, soul, and transformation. Even entire fields like transpersonal psychology, dream analysis, energy healing, and myth-based coaching are deeply Jungian in spirit. Jung opened the door to a view of psychology that was not clinical, but cosmic, a view that respected both science and soul, both logic and mystery. What made Jung unique is that he never reduced spirituality to fantasy, nor did he blindly accept mysticism. Instead, he walked the tightrope between science and soul, insisting that our inner experiences, our dreams, symbols, and synchronicities were worthy of attention, reverence, and exploration. He helped reframe mental health not just as the absence of illness, but as the presence of meaning. In a world that often tries to split the rational and the spiritual, Jung built a bridge, and modern spirituality has been crossing it ever since. Carl Jung may have lived a century ago, but his ideas are more relevant than ever. As more people seek spiritual experiences outside of organized religion, as they search for inner peace, emotional healing, and soulful connection, Jung's insights offer both a map and a mirror. His psychology wasn't just about understanding the mind. It was a sacred path toward understanding the self, and by extension, the divine. Whether you're exploring your dreams, navigating a spiritual awakening, doing shadow work, or searching for purpose, Jung's fingerprints are already on your journey. If this exploration of Jung's influence on modern spirituality inspired you, I invite you to keep journeying with us here on The Unfolding Journey. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the psyche, myth, and the spiritual path. We release thoughtful, soul-centered content each week to help you grow, heal, and unfold. Cyclone, let us know in the comments, which Jungian idea has influenced your spiritual journey the most. Thanks for being here. And remember, the path to wholeness is not linear, but it is always worth walking.